Yo! Welcome to week 2 of the NFL season and to the second edition of my weekly best bets. I kind of went over already what happened last week. We learned a lot, at least I think I did. But one thing I want to start out with right away, and this is something that always happens in the NFL season, is to just watch out for the hype train, because it will run you over. Every game has to be looked at from, I believe, two perspectives. One would be that, if a game was close, is that, the teams are evenly matched and the teams are, great, or the teams are evenly matched, teams are bad. And then there's the other way you look at it where it's a blowout and you have to ask yourself, is the team that lost that bad or is the team that won that good? So a note I made right away was to just kind of go over some of these either blowouts or some of these close games and kind of ask ourselves what part of the spectrum are these games on. So first, right off the bat, a fun one is the Jags versus the Panthers, which was a Jags blowout. So now you got to ask yourself, where do you join this hype train? Are you convinced that the Panthers are truly that bad and the Jags really don't even have to be that good to put up that kind of points? Or maybe the Panthers actually are going to be a little bit better this season like they're supposed to, but the Jags now are just that much better. So we're going to have to really just watch that kind of play out. So I'm not going to be a huge I'm not going to start fading the Panthers right away because they got blown out week 1. So that's one of those things where you can defend why to fade them, but I want to wait and see exactly what the level of competition that game actually was being, what was being dealt out. Because if the Jags are that good, then the Panthers can go out and have some upsets coming up. The next one I want to look at is another one where I think it's a little more telling of the teams maybe just aren't quite as good. So the Vikings versus the Bears, that game came down to a 1-point game. I think it was a really well coached game, but in the end, I think that it only proved that the Bears and the Vikings are relatively similarly matched teams, and they're not really that great. Versus Atlanta versus the Bucks, which was also a 3-point game, but I think that just proved that both of those teams mean business. They played a little bit better defense than we expected, especially since both the teams have explosive offenses. So that is a huge plus for them moving forward, knowing that they can keep a team that likes to score 35 points a game down to 23. And again, week 1, so we don't really know for sure what the impact of that score is going to be. But I think that when we stack up the matchup of the Falcons-Bucks versus the Bears-Vikings, it just felt like Falcons-Bucks maybe has a better pedigree on the field than the Bears-Vikings did. But only time will tell. So I'm still I'm still not quite down with the Vikings, even though they got their first win. I'm a little worried about what their offensive actual full capability is with McCarthy, especially when they get in the red zone. Okay, so just avoid the hype train. Be careful because it is out there. It will get you. And then the next thing is I'm always big on making sure to check the refs for the game. So that's why I'm putting my video out today and not tomorrow, because the refs for week 2 have been released and it's fresh in my mind right now. I just did all the numbers. So I want to get these out to you now. But another thing that you want to be careful of is, like, there is a tendency for people to be self-aware, right? So if you're constantly doing something that people don't like, maybe you actively try to avoid that behavior. Whether or not you are able to completely do it or not is not necessarily, what we're focusing on, but the fact that you're going to try to do something different to kind of change the perception or whatever, or to redeem yourself, is human nature. So the exact same thing is happening to the refs in some ways. They are self-aware. They do know that they are, like, heavily favoring the under constantly. They do know that they favor the home team, or so sometimes they will have their meetings beforehand and be like, look guys, like, commissioner's up my ass because we're constantly having less flags than everyone else. We need to get control of our games or whatever. So beware. A couple of my games, like I was loving the under last week and in one of the games, and then it was fortified by the ref, and then I guess we just didn't really feel like handicapping the game once we got supported by the ref, because the Steelers versus the Jets was a huge over, like the biggest miss I've seen in a sports book in a long time. So it was a over under 37.5 or 38.5 by the time kickoff went, and it ended up being the score. It exceeded the spread by 30 points or 28 points. So it was 32-34 in the end, which is, each team nearly covered the total by themselves. So, like, that's one of those games where you're like, holy, like, how did that happen? How did we miss that bad? But I'm going to catch some of those this year. I promise you I will catch a couple of those this year. I won't just be on the square side like we were this week, both with that and the Miami Dolphins, who, again, I came back and took them off my parlay, but now I've got them in my teams to watch. So moving forward, who are we gonna fall out of love with? We've fallen out of love with the Dolphins right away. Okay, that's it. Okay, we'll let them prove themselves later on. But now I'm also worried about certain teams to not bet against because of what they look like. So the Jets, watch out. They're not a normal team, basically. Like, they could end up running a bunch of wing T stuff that nobody's prepared for. I mean, obviously the more film that comes out, the more teams are going to be prepared, but when they can surprise you with that play action, because they only run the ball, I mean, it's just a huge advantage, and we saw it pay off multiple times in the game against the Steelers. So I'm watching out for the Jets. The Colts, when I did week 2 bets, right off the bat, I had the Colts as my, when I did preseason, had the auto fades, I had Denver going into Indianapolis and winning handedly. Now, I'm actually not even going to bet that game because I don't like the Colts at home. I think that they played pretty well last week, and I think that they can kind of replicate that type of performance where it's a gritty sort of like, they're scoring. It's like a march. They're like marching through the game. They're not, taking off and sprinting, trying to zigzag. They're fully, they're a regimented team. I think that that's going to help them out. Again, with Daniel Jones at the helm, it makes them more predictable, but I think just more solid. So yeah, already got them off week 2. So yeah, and also the Vikings. I think that I'm still pretty worried about the Vikings' potential, but I don't want to bet against them. I think that they're the best coach team in the NFL at this exact moment. I think they have 2 quality head coaches running their show, and O'Connell is a head coach, and Flores is, I think that Flores is a head coach caliber guy. That kind of got screwed around, but when you look at his numbers as a defensive coordinator, the guy is unstoppable. So watch out for the Vikings. They, especially coming off 14 wins, they're gonna be all right. I just don't know if I see them being better than Detroit, but they could be more evenly matched than I anticipated. So getting right into the picks now. Here we go. So that's just one kind of like recap, what to watch out for, how things are going so far, how I see the refs impacting the games, and so forth. First pick we're going to go over is my money line pick, and this one is an interesting one when you factor in the refs. The 49ers are going to New Orleans. New Orleans is my number 1 auto fade this year. So far, we are still bullish on that. We are going to keep fading New Orleans. The Niners didn't look great, but that was a division game, and that was always going to be tough. Now they're down Kittle. That's unbelievable. Like, obviously stuff like that's going to happen, but you just never want it to happen. So when it does, it's just like, shoot. So that's a bummer for them, but I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll figure it out. But yeah, I'm sticking with the fading the New Orleans Saints. I think that they'll just get out-coached and outclassed down in New Orleans. Next game I've got Cardinals money line hosting the Panthers. I think this spread won't be super big. I think it'll be under 7 points. I'm still going to take the money line again on the Cardinals. Again, that game last week was one of the ones that I mentioned earlier. I don't think I brought it up, but so at the end of the year, if we saw the Arizona Cardinals playing New Orleans Saints in the NFC Championship, we would all look back to the first game and go, what did we miss about that matchup that we didn't expect them to be good or whatever, right? Obviously, that's like the longest odds on the planet. That's never going to happen. But we don't know how good the Cardinals defense is, so we don't know how bad New Orleans offense is. We only know that against each other, they put up a stalemate for most of the game, and the better team edged out in the end. Not by, like, they got a stop to win. It wasn't even like, like New Orleans had a chance to pull it off. So is New Orleans good, or are the Cardinals barely able to beat the auto-fade team at the bottom of my entire league? That makes you think. So now, again, I'm like always going to be like, but I have to keep going. I have to try. So I'm going to go Cardinals money line at home over the Panthers. Again, the huge question mark here, if the Jags are amazing and New Orleans is the worst team in the league, the Panthers getting blown out by the Jags is actually a better performance than the Cardinals barely beating the Saints. So the Panthers could be better than advertised. Watch out for stuff like that. The next game I wanted to bet on was I wanted to see that Ravens-Browns spread. It's 12.5. I think that's a bad bet. I think that you're going to want to bet that because the Ravens are emotional and angry because they lost that game late. So now they're going to get the lead and put the foot on the throat. But, man, I mean, so the spread, the over-under for that game is 45.5. And the way these teams just always play each other, I just don't see, I mean, unless we see like a 35-0, 35-7, which will go under, I just feel like the Ravens at 12.5, I mean, it might even get up to 13.5. So if you can get it at 12, maybe it's a good bet. Or if you can buy it down to like 10 from 12, maybe it's a good bet. I like to buy points when I can, but I don't think that I just don't like that big number in a division game. It's going to be gritty, even though the Ravens are going to be pissed off because that emotional sort of swinging can actually be detrimental to a team's like momentum and things like that. So who knows? Again, if they're up in the fourth quarter and they let up, then the other team comes. What are we gonna see in the fourth quarter from the Ravens after what we saw last week? All right, here we go. The next one, we're going to jump over to the over-unders because I think the Steelers might be able to beat the Seahawks, but I'm not ready to put it on my best bets. So we'll jump right into the over-unders. Bengals, Jags. I'm going over in that game, 50 points. It's one of the higher points on the board this week. The ref is actually, he's an unders ref too. He was the ref for the, what game did he ref last week? He was the ref for the game on Monday night, I believe, and he was super involved in the Vikings. He dragged them across the goal line on one of the possessions. He called like 2 15-yard penalties against the defense or something like that to kind of get Minnesota back into the game before they kind of pulled away. So a guy who's definitely going to get involved in the game, but he did also have an over last week. So fingers crossed that these teams just are too powerful on offense to keep down. And stick with, don't let the ref beat you, right? So again, and these guys are aware of their tendencies. So there is a trend of occasional seasons them having like a balloon, an opposite sort of balloon. They're like one guy, if he's like 11-7 for the home team one season, maybe the next season he'll be the one guy who's who's 9-8 against, with away teams or whatever, and then balloon right back, just to get into his normal tendencies and things like that. But you never really know what they're going to come out doing. He went over on Monday night. Bummer. I did a bet, and that was the one thing I missed out of 5 that day, so that was kind of a bummer. But we won't get into all my bets that I make on the side. Only my sure things. So next one we're coming up with is I believe that Ravens Browns under 45.5. So this one I kind of had to talk myself into because I needed that fourth bet. Over-unders last week got us, and so I'm not trying to get beat by some silly thing I don't notice. The one concern I have, the main concern for this next game, obviously I looked at the ref matchup already, and I do like Brad Allen as the ref. He's an unders ref on our board, so that's good. But again, last week we had the perfect play set up in the New York Jets game, and we got beat bad. So take it with a grain of salt, whatever, fade it, whatever you want to do. But I like the under in the Cleveland at Baltimore game of 45.5. And the ref, in my opinion, supports that. The only concern I have for this game, the one thing I would say, other than, who knows what we're going to see from like penalty-wise or whatever and things like that. The one thing I don't like for this game is that the Ravens could score 42 points in rage by themselves. Like I mentioned, like 35-7 or something. So if the Ravens just we learned our lesson. Like, we're scoring 21 points a quarter. And we're never going to let up or whatever, that's obviously impossible. But, I could see 14 points a quarter if they play to their full potential. Like, I thought the Chiefs could have won against the Chargers too. Not that I picked them, but if they show up on day one with their full potential. So we don't know when we're going to get that out of teams. Some teams show their full potential in week 8, and then by week 15, they're the worst team in the league or whatever. They use up all that energy. So we don't know exactly what we're going to see, but if we see a perfect Super Bowl destined Ravens team versus a Browns team that is not very good, we could see, again, no scoring from the Browns and unlimited scoring from the Ravens. I don't see them. Obviously, I see the Browns maybe scoring like a touchdown or a couple field goals, which could totally screw everything. Because, again, we're looking 38-6, 35, 35-9. It starts to get dangerous. But that's getting a little too nitpicky. So Ravens Browns under. That's an under game. That's been an under game for 15 years, right? Everybody's going under on that game. I hate that it's a square bet, but it's the only under on the board that I really like, or that I feel confident in both teams doing what they are expected to do. Whereas my next one I'm going to give you less so. So Giants at Cowboys. I got the over in that game as sort of my 5th, 6th, 7th bets that are a little bit extra. They're not going to be my focal point, but I got Giants Cowboys over, and then I got Rams Titans under. So with that Giants Cowboys over, it looks like we have Bill Vinovich, which is he's a 60% under guy. But he also is that's correlated to him throwing less flags on the field. So and again, you'll have to make this make sense to me, but they're saying that because he has less impact on the game, teams go under more often. And I'm like, what about refs that are constantly throwing holding in the red zone and getting teams back out, and then they're forcing a field goal? That's a 4-point swing towards the under. So a guy who does not impact the game, in my opinion, and again, the stats show that 60% of his games go under, and he does not impact the game a lot. So the stats show the opposite of my feeling. But how I feel is that in a game like New York versus Dallas, where the only way a drive's going to stop is probably by, anyway, again, a holding is going to sputter your offense. But I feel like these teams are going to let it rip, and they're not going to have, I know New York, I said they're going to have a good defense, but let's see if that pass rush has time to get to Dak with this good offensive line. It could be the perfect sort of matchup where Dak is able to stand back there, have some success with that impressive pass rush, and then New York is able to carve up the Dallas D. with the lack of pressure that they may be able to get on Russ. But 44.5, I think it is. It's not super high, so that's like a 24-21. 24-21 or over. There you go. 24-21 Cowboys. 28-14 or under. So we need 28-17. 28-17 Cowboys. And then that other matchup that I just kind of threw out there, Rams-Titans under, is John Hussey. He calls a lot of pass interference. Like, that's the only ref that has pass interference as his top 3 calls listed. So, you know, that's not great for the under. But he is a home money line guy, so it means that the Titans maybe are gonna like play closer than you might think against the Rams, who are supposed to be really great. But based on the Rams' score last weekend, only putting up 14 points against a good defense, I could see the Rams also once again scoring 21 points and getting this win, 21-20, 21-17, which both of those scores are under. And also the interesting part about this ref too, so he's a home favorite guy, but he also is like 60% favorites or something over the last few years. So yeah, watch out for that. All right. So that's pretty much everything. One thing I did not give you was the Ron Tolbert stats. Any game where he has the over-under set at 47, he goes over. Any game under 47, he tends to go under. That's the matchup for the Arizona money line versus the Carolina Panthers. He's also 90 and 71 against the spread. So for the home teams, I'm sorry, for the favorites. So whoever's favored in the game, he's a major. 60% towards the favorite team. So that's a great little nugget for us right there. That's favored for us for the Arizona game. All right, so that's gonna do it. That's 6 picks total. I also threw on the Steelers money line versus Seahawks as like kind of just like a toss it out there, or if you can buy points for the Ravens game. But again, my primary picks are going to be the first 4 I gave you. That's going to be Niners money line, Cardinals money line, Bengals Jags over 50, and Ravens Browns under 45.5. You put all those bets in. Hopefully you can get about 5-1, 6-1. Depending on the odds there. And throw a 20, throw a 25, fade all of it. Last week we went 75%, so hopefully we can hit it this week. And we'll keep rocking, keep the positivity going. That's the best way to enjoy this is to win. So that's my goal, is to get a dub in here pretty quick. All right, enjoy the games.